How can we become more successful every day? How do we get what we want out of life, at home, at work, and in our communities? I'm Charlie Harari, and I've been giving answers to these questions to audiences around the country and globe, in speeches, on the radio, and in the classroom. In more than 15 countries, I've shared lessons I've learned as a partner in an investment and advisory firm, founder of an educational initiative, and as a professor at Yeshiva University. On this episode of Elements of Success, we're exploring the concept of vision, how to develop it, keep it, and grow from it. We'll gain lessons from a real estate mogul who took over his first company at the age of 25, explore how the everyday experience of food starts with a vision, learn techniques from a visualization expert, and take some lessons from the youngest of minds. When I think about vision, the first person that comes to mind is real estate mogul Scott Reckler, who has achieved things few thought reasonable or possible. I went to his company headquarters to see what lessons he had to share. Behind me is RXR Plaza, the crown jewel of the suburban office market and headquarters of RXR Realty, one of the most exciting real estate companies in the country. We're going to meet CEO and Chairman Scott Reckler and ask him how he built all of this and what are his principles of success. Come with me. While most of us are just getting started in our careers at 25 years old, that's the tender age at which Scott Reckler was taking over the family business, Rex & Associates Realty Corp. He took the company public a few years later and eventually grew it to more than $6 billion. In 2007, Scott could see the headwinds facing the real estate industry in the country and made the difficult decision to sell the company. By selling then, despite his sentimental associations, Scott generated a return of 715% for shareholders in one of the largest public real estate management buyouts in history. But Scott wasn't done. He knew that he could relaunch his real estate efforts with a new name and new ideas at the same time everyone else was looking to get out of the market. He founded RXR Realty, growing the company so fast that in just a few short years, RXR was one of New York's leading real estate companies. He developed RXR Plaza and moved his company there. Throughout all of this, Scott has been engaged in the local community and noted for his philanthropic work. He was ranked 4th on the Commercial Observer's Power 100 list, and in 2011 was appointed Vice Chancellor of the Board of Commissioners of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Scott took me through RXR's headquarters, from the majestic atrium in the lobby to his own corner office, where we talked about his success, beginning with his startling rise to the top of the company at the age of 25. How did it start? When was the first moment in your career where you realized that you were going to lead this company?
It's funny, sometimes crisis creates opportunity, and when I came into the business, it was 1989, 1990, and the real estate market was going through a crisis, and I had just come through school and grad school and looked at the world differently. And so when it became time to think about repositioning the company and dealing with some of the challenges we were facing in that economic downturn, it was easier for me to sort of take the new approach than the people that were there beforehand. So by the very nature of that, I began to sort of lead the negotiations of sort of restructuring our company, repositioning it, and then ultimately taking it through its initial public offering in 1995.
But a lot of people have this. A lot of times young people come up and say, the way the old guys are doing it doesn't work. But many times they end up nowhere because there's an establishment that's stopping them. How did you navigate that? How are you able to get the confidence of the older people, so to speak, to allow you to put in what is the new vision?
A couple of things that I think worked to my advantage. One was I brought in sort of advisors that served as mentors for me. And so by having that, it was someone that I could turn to that gave me confidence to bounce things off of as I was going. The second is when you're young and new to something and you're confident, sometimes that blind confidence enables you to go do things that you otherwise wouldn't have the courage to do alternatively, and take certain risks that you otherwise wouldn't do. And then energy. What I have found in generally, when the economies are going really well and people are doing really well, there's a tendency to get complacent. And if you're new to that and you come into an environment where you can make a change and you're really dedicated and focused and studying hard and realizing that you're going to do things different and working harder than the next person, it's amazing how much more you can get done than the complacent people. And I think there was a little bit of that happening in the late 80s, early 90s that gave me a window of opportunity.
So let me just jump in and sort of nail this down, because I think for me, I'm trying to figure out what are the principles of success. I want to understand what you relied on. What I'm hearing you say to me is, one, ask. Surround yourself with smart people. Two, almost blind confidence. You have something, feel like you can, almost like the act as if principle. And number three is desire, energy. Would you feel like that's sort of, in many ways, if you look at your career and you look back right now at all, and we'll go through some of the bumps, and you've gone through so much, would you say that those principles are sort of key for how you grow?
I would say so, and I think there's also having a plan of where you want to go and recognizing it's not going to always be a straight line or a straight course, but somewhere in that plan, there's going to be some opportunity that's going to open. And when that opportunity opens, you got to be positioned to grab it.
Well, so what happens when you feel nervous?
Listen, I think everyone gets nervous, and people just deal with their nerves in their own way. One thing that's sort of been a basis for me is I'm a big believer that preparation breeds confidence, and if you're confident, you'll be successful. You know, the way I sort of deal with my nerves is I prepare, and if I know that I've done everything I can to prepare, then I'm going to do the best I can do, and I'll leave the rest up to fate to let things happen.
I mean, what's amazing is that in Jewish thought, there's a concept about the dichotomy between faith and work. And we're almost in some way supposed to work really, really hard with an understanding that I can only do so much and I don't know what's coming next. And I think this is what you're talking about, which is as we hit those walls, we assume that it's done, when if you have a sort of longer term perspective and a little bit of faith, that there's like a larger plan, you find that there's sort of ways around it.
That's right.
One lesson we can take away from what we've heard so far from Scott is that in order to go after your vision, you have to be confident. How do you make yourself feel confident? One way is to seek advice. The second way to breed confidence is through preparation and hard work. When we know we've done all that we can to prepare, we have confidence that we can achieve our goals and faith that things will work out to get us to our vision. Scott talks about having confidence in oneself, but building a business like Scott's involves lots of other people too. I ask him about that as he takes me through RXR's office. So you're saying that as you're building this company, you're hitting bumps along the road. So what are you doing to enable you to get over those bumps? Like how are you motivating your people or yourself in times of uncertainty?
I think as a leader, when there's uncertain times, you need to give people a plan, because that gives people a sense of confidence and something that they can grab a hold of to do on a day-to-day basis. So for me, it's face that reality and then develop a plan to react to that reality and be clear with your team members what that plan is, and knowing that if they can execute the pieces of that plan, they'll be seeing progress. And that helps, I think, calm the feelings of uncertainty and avoids that being something that distracts them. And more importantly, in challenging times, there's a tendency to get paralyzed. And if you have a plan that people can keep moving forward on that plan, then I think it becomes, a productive period. And that's typically, by the way, where most companies either thrive or fail.
Scott takes me into one of RXR's conference rooms to illustrate exactly what he means when he talks about having a larger plan and his vision for the company. A map of the New York tri-state area showing RXR's holdings. When you came on, did you have the city in your sights? Was that always in your mentality?
I think this, to me, New York City and the whole tri-state area are interrelated. And if Manhattan is really where a lot happens, and so that's the place where I think that we always wanted to focus. As a matter of fact, I remember on our first roadshow when we were going public, I had a map very similar to this, and we had our first rehearsal, I guess, with the investment bankers. They wanted to see your presentation, and so I put up this map, and they said, no, and they took a pen and they cut out everything but Long Island. I said, what are you doing? Our strategy is to go through the whole New York tri-state area. They said, that may be your strategy, but we're not going to tell people that's your strategy until you're ready to execute it. So right now, this is what you're focused on. So it was from the beginning, but it took us from 1995 until 1999 to actually accomplish it.
Amazing. There's a great principle about visualization, seeing what's possible. And what this represents to me is that you came on and you really had this, but what you really saw was this.
Right.
And the ability for us to see what's possible, even though we're not actually doing it right now, enables us to at least have a path to where to go.
That's right.
Every great vision starts in the same way. It starts by understanding the concept of visualization. We speak about our brain as a supercomputer, which means it has the ability to remember things, it has the ability to analyze things, it has the ability to simulate. Your brain doesn't only live in the present. Your brain also can fathom, can create in its mind that which is not necessarily real. It has the ability to imagine tomorrow. It has the ability to picture what not only is, but what could be. Visualizing success isn't just about principles. There are also techniques being honed by professionals that we can use every day. One expert in those techniques was willing to share her lessons with us.
My name is Carol Ward, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist and confidence expert.
The author of 2 books on the mind-body connection, Carol recently put out a CD of guided visualization exercises called Your Inner Voice.
The way that I define visualization in the work that I do is that it's a plan or a strategy or an intention that you want to create for the future, or it's a way of addressing an issue that's going on currently in your life. I always call it almost a relaxing into this vision for the future that allows them to picture and sense and feel what they might need to do in order to create that vision.
Carol says there are 3 things we can learn to improve our visualization. One is that creating a detailed vision of your goal makes it more concrete.
I think people often set goals and they fling them out there like, oh, I want to do this, or I want to make $1 million, or I want to meet someone. But they don't focus in on what that looks like, and they don't focus in on the details. So having the vision, the actual picture in your mind, I call it in your mind's eye, and then you fill in all these details, which allows you then to be open to that concept, to recognize it when it actually occurs.
Carol's second lesson is that visualization needs to come in realistic steps, that you can't achieve everything at once.
I'm much more about working in small steps toward the larger thing. It's almost that long vision that you can have. You can put that goal way out there and then work your way back to, okay, what's the first thing? And it makes it much more manageable.
The third lesson is to fine-tune your goals through visualization. If your vision makes you uncomfortable, visualizing can help you figure out why and how to fine-tune your vision so you'll be more likely to go after it.
When you picture that thing that you want with all of those details, how do you feel in your body? So for example, someone might say, gee, I want to make a lot of money. But as they picture themselves with a lot of money in their lives, they feel anxious instead of excited. And that's an important clue, because if you feel anxious or afraid about what you're trying to create, on a funny way, you're going to move away from that vision. So I think it's important to keep checking in on a physical level to say, okay, well, how does it feel to have that vision? And what would be the first step, as opposed to, I'm here today and next week, I have this fabulous life.
You now have created your vision. What happens is you're using your visualization technique to create the beginnings of a plan. This is your destination. Now, this is the key to it all. Just the act of going for it is where success lies. Successful people aren't people that have stuff. They're people that know how to go out and create stuff. They're constantly figuring out new ways and innovating the way life could be. And it is in that process that you find success. And what happens for most times is that even though you don't hit that exact vision, having the destination is what gets you on the road. And on the way, you go, you know what, I was going this way. The truth is, we should really make a detour left. I think this is a lot better. Developing and executing on a vision for your life isn't only about long-term plans for career and home. We can use vision to make parts of our lives better every single day, to succeed on the day-to-day. Take something as simple as eating. Every plate of food we eat begins with someone's vision. One of the most innovative kosher chefs shared his vision in constructing a new dish to teach us how a vision can evolve based on the facts on the ground.
I'm Moshe Wendell. I'm the chef and owner of Pardes. We're a small restaurant in the Borum Hill section of Brooklyn, New York.
Chef Wendell began his career cooking non-kosher food, which he refers to as his treif years, but went kosher at the age of 28 and has since earned a reputation as one of the country's premier kosher chefs. Today, Chef Wendell showcases one of his newest and more unusual dishes.
I'd say charred beef heart with a corned lamb tongue with kohlrabi that we get from our local farmers with 3 different preparations. The synthesis for it actually is a dish I was doing back in Treif at a restaurant called Peef. It was like a skewer of, I think it was lamb heart and pork bacon and like pressed veal belly or something. Then I sort of added this like celery root and mustard accompaniment to it.
To make the dish kosher, Chef Wendell and his team had the idea to substitute lamb tongue for the pork bacon. But getting that ingredient wasn't so easy.
It's very labor intensive to actually get a tongue kosher. There's a lot of internal stuff you have to remove. So a beef tongue, they have no problem doing it, but a lamb tongue, it's like this big. We're the only guys who managed to like, you know, push our meat purveyors, who are very lucky. My meat happens to be a close friend also, to like make these guys do it.
The lamb heart, however, was a different story.
The shechita threw out the hearts when they kept the tongue, so we're like, well, let's do a beef heart anyway and see if it works, and it does work. Like, beef heart has enough gaminess that can kind of stand up to like that sort of lamby flavor of lamb tongue, and they kind of work nicely on the plate.
Celery root became kohlrabi, because that's what was available.
Kohlrabi right now is in season. We get beautiful stuff from Migliorelli Farms in upstate New York that we get from local farmers market.
Kohlrabi gets prepared 3 ways: pickled, pureed, and slawed, to showcase different techniques and textures. But if you come to Pardes and ask for this dish, you may find it's gone through an evolution.
We're never like comfortable saying, oh, this is a good dish, it's done. Like, you know, we all eat the food here every day. We all are sort of tasting the food here every day. And if someone says, ah, it doesn't work, or this ingredient tastes different now than it did before, then obviously you gotta think on your feet. I mean, you can't like sit there and be like stuck on a recipe if the recipe's not working.
So while a vision for a particular dish may change, Chef Wendell's overall vision for Pardes hasn't.
Hopefully people like what we're doing. I mean, that's all I want that's all I really want to happen here, you know? Make people happy.
When it comes to being happy, one of my students had an excellent question.
How is it possible to be happy and truly enjoy that success if you're always trying to move towards something else?
Question is, how are you able to ever enjoy your life if you're always creating a vision for tomorrow? And I believe the answer is, you can appreciate where you are, but at the same time, be excited about where you can go. The balance, that feeling is the feeling of always being in movement. Living in the moment is a lesson we learn all the time from children. Achieving a vision within that is a lesson they can also teach us. In the historic Jewish community of Manhattan's Lower East Side, these 3-year-olds provide a lesson in creating a vision and carrying it out successfully.
Do you need squares or a different shape? Okay, why don't you go ask Edie if it's okay if you use some of her squares.
At the Educational Alliance School, preschoolers are studying a curriculum inspired by the work being done on their own school.
There's a lot of construction on our building right now, and each day to walk to the playground, the kids see the construction, and they wave to the construction workers, and there's an elevator that goes up and down that we're always noticing, and they noticed all the different tools that they were using, the jackhammers and the bobcats, and they became so interested in it. So we decided to bring it into the classroom by pretending to be construction workers. And then we talked about what would we do to our school if we were construction workers, and we started building a school, and then a zoo, and now different buildings in New York City.
Studying these structures throughout New York City develops the children's visions for their own building projects.
These buildings are here for inspiration. They'll slowly start to make different noticings, we call them. Today they noted the points. Tomorrow they'll probably notice these columns and the windows, and as they continue to look at it, they will be able to bring a lot of those aspects into their building.
Before building, the children are encouraged to draw a picture of what they would like to construct.
This is my line house.
To put their vision on paper.
So here Chloe was working on a plan, and she drew the bottom part and then added the point to the top, and now she is recreating that by adding points to her building over here.
As the preschoolers' constructions grow and their visions materialize, they get to see their hard work and determination paying off.
It's a slow process, and they are trying a lot of different things, and there's a lot of knocking down, and there's sharing issues, and we're running out of blocks, and there's a lot of problem solving. As it sort of comes together, and they realize that they can connect the buildings, and they can work together to create a big city, they're going to feel really proud of themselves, and it's really exciting. They made this really tall building, they're measuring it, they're proud of how tall it is, and now you'll see they're slowly bringing more and more blocks over to add to their city, and now it's a whole city when it started off as just a basket of magma tiles.
As they build, the vision grows, and looking over their constructions, the kids can't help but feel a sense of accomplishment.
It makes me happy. My building is great.
Usually what happens in moments of crisis is that the crisis that we feel is a shift that we feel. Things get shifted around. Things get messed up. The deck gets reshuffled, and the reshuffling is what feels like crisis. Everything is going a certain way, and then we get reshuffled, and you go, oh, that feels different. But if you're able to take advantage, if you're able to capitalize on the reshuffling, now put yourself in a position where you can be uniquely successful. How? Through vision. Scott Reckler made the toughest decision of his career in 2007, selling off the company that had been the family business for decades. So here you are, a young CEO, you're building your company, and you're achieving a certain level of success in the real estate terms, which is square footage. And now you're at a place where you don't have that anymore. What's happening in your mind right now? Are you saying, just, we know the principles, right? Let's just do it again?
Right.
Is that, you focus the company, you did this once, we can do it again, or was there something else that went on? What was going on to allow you to rebuild?
When we decided to sell the company, it was a point where the market was really speculative. And I'll never forget that one of my partners, Mike Maturo, came over right before we began to launch the sale of the company. And he said to me, Scott, this is Rex, and this is part of your family for 50 years. Do you really want to go through with this, even though we think it's the right thing to do? I know this is really personal to you. And I said, Mike, from our standpoint is we're young. We know there's going to be a tough challenge ahead of us. We should sell the company and then reposition ourselves to start over again when the markets offer us better opportunities. And he left, and then later that night my son came to me, who at the time I guess was 10 years old, and said, Dad, I heard you and Mike talking about selling Rexon. And I said, yeah, well, we're having this conversation about trying to figure out if it's the right thing to do. He said, Dad, that is the worst possible idea I've ever heard. I can't believe you would sell Rexon. I said, Elijah, I'm sure that you have to explain to you why, what it is, and why we're doing this. And I have tears swelling in my eyes because it's already an emotional time for me. And then as we went through the process, there were challenges from counter bids from people and other things of that nature. And I remember even in the middle of it, while I was going through some tense moments, he looks at me and said, "I told you not to sell Rexon." and so I think that was a challenge. And I think you underestimate how hard it is after you build a business to rebuild a business.
Yeah,
and and so when we came in, we were very thoughtful about how we were going to get it done. Obviously, it was tough economic times. But I would say it took a good 3-4 years before we were able to get back in full stride to where we were. Now, I'll tell you, now that we've rebuilt it better than we were before as a company, and we're more effective, and I think we're, as a team, we're more experienced, and our business model is more resilient and competitive than I think it was before. But it took a good 3 to 4 years to actually get into that spot.
Even though selling the company was a difficult personal decision, Scott was able to keep his emotions in check, enough to focus on what was the best business decision for the company and stay the course toward his ultimate goal.
If you're feeling really emotional, you can be blind to what reality is because the emotions blind you. And so what you need to do is move away from those emotions to actually face the factual reality and deal with the tough issues, right? You can't put your head in the sand. If you know you have a challenge, identify the challenge, and then develop a series of potential solutions. And even if that is not something that you think you can immediately accomplish, start moving in that direction and start working your way there. And be prepared to pivot and change, but you know where you're trying to get to.
By keeping the end goal, his vision, in sight, being guided by rational thinking rather than his emotions, Scott was able to take his company through tough times. He had the patience to wait out a down economy and to build up gradually. He had faith that if he kept taking small steps toward his vision, he would ultimately achieve success again. By visualizing what is possible, visualizing what is ideal, in your life, in your person, in your community, in your business, whether it's a small store, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a big company that has a CEO that is navigating through all these difficulties in real estate, whether it's in every aspect of life, whether it's in your relationships, whatever it is, as you live in your life, as you sit back and ask yourself, I know I am where I am. What could it be? Success isn't getting there. Success isn't starting and it's not finishing. This isn't success. And if you know people that are successful, by the way, in any industry, whether it's a personal success or communal success or business success, they're never getting somewhere and going, ah, we're here, we're done, we're successful, where's my trophy? Ever. Because success isn't a destination. The vision is what gets you going towards something. The vision is where you're moving towards. It's what you're trying to create. Success is along the way. This is where success happens.